The more I get to sit in worship services, I used to think it was about us telling God how much we love Him, but the more I get to be a part of it, the more I realize I think it's about us realizing how great God's faithfulness is to us, and how much He loves us, you know, as we sing about Him. And yeah, I really appreciate our worship teams here, and yeah, it's a cool thing to be a part of, you know, and I'm grateful for that time. And it's funny because as a kid I hated it, but things change, you know, and that was really cool. We've got a lot of cool things going on at the church this week. We've just had I feel like God's hand has really been on us, you know, and in addition to my daughter screaming for 3 hours last night at different times, total lapse time. We've actually had some really cool things happening. And I know that you know, the devil just wanted me to be tired up here today, but it can't happen because I'm too excited about what we've got to share today. And I know you guys don't get to see it as much, but I just wanted to share with you that we've had a lot of really cool emails and notes and just stories of the power of God moving in people's lives, specifically through the ministries of this church. And I just want you guys to know that you're a part of that. And I want to thank you for doing that. And I want you to know that especially this week, God gave us just a really cool insight into His supernatural work in people's lives. And thank you for being a part of that. We also have cool stuff coming up. As Candace mentioned, we've got 2 great new Sunday school classes coming up, November 2nd. And I got to talk about these for a second because I am super excited about them. One of them is taught by, I think, one of the most renowned human beings on earth. She's beautiful and she's incredible. It's my wife. But Lord have mercy, I'm going to have a tough time paying attention to what's being said in that class. But we're actually going to co-teach a little bit. But it's on small group leadership. And really the part I love about it is it's leadership principles that I believe will apply to any area of our lives. And if you lead in any capacity in your life, if you have a job where you want to influence people, I believe this class will benefit you greatly. And so whether or not you're interested in being in a small group, if you're interested in influencing people, I really believe this could be a class that would be a blessing to you. And we're trying to lower the barriers to entry. So we have childcare, and you don't need to sign up. You just need to show up. 8:45, that'll be great. And then another great person, my dad and mom, will be teaching a class. Great people. Well, they're one flesh. Person. My dad and mom will be teaching a class. I would say more than anything else, the information in this class has probably had the greatest influence on my life. I would definitely have to say it's been shaping to who our family is and to God's hand on us. It's also been shaping to the world because the thoughts behind this class are part of an incredibly influential program that has brought the message of the gospel of Jesus Christ all around the world. And so if you're interested in missions or you've always been interested in the story of Scripture start to finish, this is one of those classes that you're not going to want to miss. And so the only problem is there's 2 classes, and you know, you can't be in 2 places at once. So you got to choose. But I'd love to see a really major portion of our church do this. We have a great heritage of Sunday school participation, and I think it'd be really cool to see lots. I want to have space problems here. I want to have space issues. And so anyway, I'd love to invite you guys to that. Additionally, I just wanted to share with you guys, 6 weeks ago, we started an online worship experience. And, you know, we just figured, hey, we've got video cameras. Let's just throw it online. But if you guys haven't been watching, we've had a really cool response. Usually online, the response that we're getting, churches 5 to 6 times larger than us would have a similar viewership that we're having online, which is really cool. So we have a lot of people, hundreds in fact, who are attending this service online. Hello to those of you doing the dishes in your underwear. I'm glad that you're not here with us this morning. Just kidding. No, you should come and join us because I know that you're halfway paying attention and you're going to tell me when you see me at the supermarket that you watch me online, but it doesn't count. So, seriously, we have some big upgrades coming to the online experience. I know the video isn't great, so we've invested in some really cool new equipment, and I'm excited to see that come in the next few weeks and get installed. Our purpose statement is generation after generation becoming fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. And as technology becomes a bigger deal to our next generations, I'm excited that we as a church are investing in it. We also have a new mobile app that's coming out. Can you believe that? We're really hip wild with it now. In the next couple weeks, you'll be able to, next couple months, you'll be able to download the mobile app on Android and Apple phones. which is pretty cool. So you'll be able to join our services online that way. And then lastly, for the technology stuff, this is really cool, but my wife and I don't even know what a check is. I had to have someone explain that to me, how to write a check and whatnot, because apparently that's the only way to give here. But you guys, leadership of this church was already talking about giving online, and we can do that now. You can give online on our website. It's the smartest, best, most efficient way to give here at this church is to do so online. It allows us to use the gifts most efficiently and effectively. The processing is the cheapest this way, so I want to encourage you guys to do online recurring gifts if you're able to. You have a computer and email, because I know some of you guys are like, I don't have any of that newfangled stuff, and that's fine. That's fine. That's cool, too. We love that. But I love that our church, this isn't like my prompting that has done this. This is just our church together saying, hey, God has called us to reach generation after generation, and so we're going to do that. We're going to invest in the future, and that's what I see all of us together doing, and I'm so proud to be a part of that. I'm proud to be a part of an organization. I'm proud to be a part of a group of people that just says, yeah, we want to do that. We want to embrace God's plan and purpose for our church, and it's just been super cool to watch it happen, because I haven't even instigated a lot of this stuff. And in a few weeks, we have, if you don't know, Trunk or Treat coming up. And it is by far the biggest outreach event that our church does. We have over 2,000 people that came last year to Trunk or Treat. It was a crazy bunch of shenanigans, I won't lie. I mean, we had to do a lot of stuff. If you were a part of it last year, it started raining, or it was going to rain, and we had to change all of our plans, and the building almost collapsed and lit on fire. But we made it. It was good. And we're super excited about what God's going to do through it this year. And this year, we're not just, and I want to ask you guys to join me in prayer, because this is the purpose of Trunk or Treat. We're not just trying to see a bunch of people come and get candy and hear music. We're trying to build God's kingdom through this event. And our prayer is, and we're defining the win as not a bunch of people that are coming to the event, but how many people will come from that event to our new series, Jesus in 3D, which is all about seeing Jesus in 3D in our lives. I think so many of us, our relationship with Jesus is based on seeing Jesus on flannel graphs and in picture books and pretending like we know him. But Jesus in 3D is about seeing and having a relationship with Jesus in real three-dimensional life. And so I'm super excited. I believe that we're going to see many new followers of Christ in that series, and I'm praying that God uses Trunk or Treat as a big deal for that. We're doing a mailer to the community. So I just want to ask you guys to join me in prayer for those things and join the leadership of this church in prayer for all those things. That's just kind of a look ahead. Now, this series is called Bless This City. And I know many of you guys are kind of like, when's he going to talk about blessing the city? I mean, week one, we talked about, comparison as a thief of joy and blah, blah, blah. And then last week, we talked about bless your circle. And is he going to get to this week is bless the family? When is he going to talk about blessing the city? And the answer is next week. I mean, next week is going to be awesome, okay? I mean, we got props. It's going to be incredible. I mean, really, it really is. We've got all kinds of cool stuff happening next week. Next week is going to be encouraging. I want to ask you guys, if you got someone in your life who is struggling with feeling joy, struggling with finding purpose, next week is going to be the most encouraging message that I know how to preach. I want people to leave here feeling like we can run through walls. Don't actually try it, because you get a concussion or whatever, unless you're like an X-Men mutant. But because some of those guys can run through walls. If you haven't seen the movie, it's cool. I love superhero movies. Next week is going to be great. This week, though, and the reason why we're talking about family, and thank you, Grant, I love that. Isn't Grant great? Just mood music. I would like Grant to come and play a soundtrack for my life. Can you just follow me around and kind of play, like, Grant, this was a little more up. I just think yeah. Yeah, no, we're good, seriously, thank you. No, stop, that's good. Love Grant. Grant's best. Grant's our music and worship director, and I'm really grateful for him and that he puts up with me and doesn't leave things in my office. Okay, but I believe that family is a prerequisite to blessing the city. You see, the key passage that we've been talking about for this series has been in Jeremiah 29, verse 7. It says, "And work for the peace and prosperity of the city where I sent you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, for in its welfare you will find your welfare." I love that passage. I think it's great, but what you don't know, and that's something that people love to read about, but just before that passage is a key bunch of instructions that basically say, hey, before you worry about the city that you live in, you need to get stuff right with your family. You need to take care of your stuff at home. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, because the truth is, let's say your house was on fire and the fireman shows up and his fire truck is just in flames. You know, he just pulls up, flames. I mean, that's not right. He's got to take care of his fire engine. Let's say, I believe that God has called me to be a pastor and to bless this city, to bless this church, bless this city. Let's just say that my house was in complete disarray and my wife didn't want to talk to me and I hated my kids and things were horrible at home and I was like, all right, guys, let's go. You guys wouldn't want to, you wouldn't want to fight. And I think so often, though, our tendency is stuff is in disarray at home. My house is like a garage full of junk. Every time I open the garage door, I look at it and think, just close that and leave, And I think so often that's what our families are like. And so it's like, okay, I'm just going to get involved in all these different areas. And I really believe that in order for us to experience the greatest, or to be a part of bringing the greatest blessing to our cities, we need to first look at our priorities, because I think it goes God, family, work, everything else. Those are the priorities that God gave us. And I really believe that before we worry about saying, we're going to take the city by storm, I want to spend a moment talking about how we can build a family that is stable through the great storms of life. Today's talk is all about finding stability in the storms of life. And I know a lot of you guys are like, what storms? Well, to quote an old Baptist minister I knew, if you're not in a storm right now, get ready, because another one's coming. Amen, brothers and sisters. It's just that's my memory of my childhood in church. But anyway, I was going to go on with the impression, and I was like, no, because I will go over the line if I talk in that accent one more time. But I want to talk about bringing blessing to the families, to weathering the storms of family. And starting in Jeremiah 29, verse 4, just before our key passage, it says, this is what the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of Israel, says to all the captives he has exiled to Babylon from Jerusalem. And you'll notice in this passage, the Lord is written in all caps. Okay? Why is that written in all capitals? You see that? Take that verse off now. Take it off. But when you see that, I said take it off. Come on, Hunter. You notice that Lord is written in all caps. And sometimes in the Old Testament, you'll see stuff where it's like Lord, but the Ord is still in caps, but lowercase. Sometimes it's just written in all lowercase. And sometimes you'll see the Lord referred to as God. And there's a specific reason for that. You see, the Bible's translated from Hebrew into English. And the Hebrew culture was built around the worship of God. And this is, I really believe what I'm about to teach you guys is really important for reading the Bible. It's really important for today's passage, but just in general, it's going to be something that's going to help your Old Testament Bible reading if you're ever cracking open the Bible of the Old Testament. And so I'd love for you guys just to learn this concept. But Hebrew culture had many different ways to refer to God. Many different words that they used to talk about God. And each word would signify something different. And because the English language didn't develop around the worship of God, we don't have as versatile a set of words to refer to God, okay? So we use different tricks to signify what type of Hebrew word is being used for God. And there are many different words, but there are three primary ones, okay? And so when you see Lord with a capital L and then still smaller case size, but still uppercase O-R-D, the Lord, that is referring to the Hebrew word Adonai, okay? And Adonai is just a way that you'd be like, yes, my Lord, like just the word for a local Lord. But when it referred to the God of the universe, the God of Jacob, Isaac, and Joseph, and Abraham too, and well, all of us, it would be written in a plural to signify the Lord of Lords, which is where in English we get that title, the Lord of Lords, when Adonai is written as plural. That would be a literal translation of the Hebrew word Adonai. Okay, additionally, sometimes you'll see the name of God just written as God with a capital G. And that's the Hebrew word Elohim. Okay, and this is a more respectful way to refer to God. And it was just, Elohim is the generic way to refer to any God. But when it referred to the God of gods, it would be written with a plural. Okay, Elohim. Okay, and sometimes, if you wanted to be even more respectful, to refer to God in a more, like this is a more powerful manner, okay? This is when God would introduce himself before he spoke. Sometimes he would say, Adonai Elohim. This is the word of the Lord your God, okay? And then finally, the most powerful way to refer to God, it was actually the first, Hebrews believe that it was, Jewish culture believes that it's God's first name. And because they didn't want to take the name of the Lord in vain, they actually would misspell it intentionally, and they would never speak it out loud. And so we're not actually 100% positive how to pronounce it or what it actually is. We have a very good educated guess, but the Hebrew letters that are put together are actually unpronounceable. There's many different theories about what it actually means, but I'll just tell you, the way we think it's pronounced is Yahweh. And when Yahweh is written in the Bible, it's all capitals, just like it was in that passage. Lord, L-O-R-D, all caps, bam, there it is. Okay, so when God wanted to introduce himself, if he was going to say something, this is what Yahweh says. It was like, whoa, that's a really big deal. And then the way to add, like, the extra punctuation, like the biggest way that God can introduce himself, his most powerful title is Yahweh Sfad. Okay, Sfad means the armies of heaven, or hosts of heaven, or the warriors of heaven. Okay? And so this passage, it says, this is what the Yahweh Sfad, the Lord of heaven's armies, okay? This is like the powerful God of action, the conqueror, the God who conquers, the God who is in the process of conquering. This is like when a Jewish person would hear that, oh my gosh, like this says, this is what the Yahweh Sfad says, like this is like all of God's word is a big deal, but God really wants to add extra emphasis to this. And I think it's kind of funny because you think, okay, this is what the Yahweh Sfad says, and he's probably going to say something like, I'm the man, or he's going to say something like, I'm going to conquer this nation and kill all these people on your behalf, right? I mean, that's Old Testament. That's what we think God's going to say. But ironically, what follows right here, and this is a little bit unique, is a passage on family. It's a passage on family. I think a lot of times you see that and you're like, well, what is with that? I mean, a passage on family, God? This is what the Lord of heaven's armies has to say? And then talk about family? And here's the truth. I really believe that God places a supernatural value on family and extended family that our culture does not understand. Because our society doesn't value family, I believe, at the same level that God does. I think in Scripture, God places a supernatural value on family structures, the importance of family that we oftentimes don't understand. It's one of the reasons I love this town in particular, because I believe that this town does have a unique value on family. But still, God says family is super important. And what he says is really simple. He says in verse 5, build homes and plan to stay, plant gardens and eat the food they produce. And you read that and you're like, meh, that's kind of simple, God. I mean, okay. But really, I think that's saying, look, food and shelter are really important. In fact, a prerequisite to family is food and shelter. And I think a lot of times we get this reversed. You see, when I asked my father-in-law for his blessing to marry his daughter. Now, Kristen, everybody knows a Kristen outside of Tara. Tara is unique. She's handicapped. She's beautiful. She's wonderful. And she's her dad's favorite. But of the three other daughters, Kristen is by far the most favorite. I mean, the other sisters, who's dad's favorite? Kristen, you know. And you ask my father-in-law, Dan, who's your favorite? Kristen, of course. You know, he'll even say it. And Kristen, of course, she's like, oh, no. But she's got that. I mean, just look at it. She's got the 5-mile smile. She's got it all. I don't blame him. She's my favorite too of all Kristen's sisters. The others aren't even in the realm of favorite. Like they're barely in tolerate territory. Just kidding. They're in wonderful territory. But listen, before I asked my father-in-law for his blessing, I got together a 5-year plan for what I thought our relationship would be, because I wanted to lay out a vision, a 10-year plan. And I know it may or may not be. Actually, we're incredibly on course. But regardless, you know, you show God your plans and make him laugh. But I wanted to show him that I had a vision for our relationship, you know, and I got together a financial portfolio because I wanted to show him that I'd eliminated debt in our lives and I'd be able to take care of her. You know, because I was asking him to trust me with the stewardship of her life, and I bought a house. You know, because I wanted to make sure, part of the reason I bought that house was I wanted to have a place to take her, and I wanted to make sure that I had this man's blessing. You know, because I had a long way to go, because to begin with, he hates preachers, you know, and he does. He does. And he even talked to my wife. He's like, are you sure you want to marry a preacher? You know, because he is a preacher. But anyway, so I knew I had a ways to go with him. And he was like, of course, you can have my blessing. And then he went and checked out my house and told me all the things I needed to change. True story. Why was he doing that, though? Because God gave him a gold keychain. And each of his daughters had a gold key on that keychain. And I was asking him to give me one of the most important things that God had given him. I was asking him for that. You know, and he understood that what is the number one cause of relational strife? What is the number one cause of divorce in our society? Financial problems. When God is saying this, look, if you want to set up a family, if you want to have a family that's going to be easier right off the bat, make sure you take care of these things. Now, I know there's all kinds of stories. There's some of you in here, like, when we got married, we were penniless and broke and blah, blah, blah. Good for you. That's great. You didn't honor God's word, but God still blessed you anyway. Okay? It's the truth. That's the truth. I'm happy for you. You know, but God says, look, make sure you take care of these things. If you want to have a really blessed marriage, start off on a stable foundation. Take care of these simple issues. Okay? Work for these things. And you'll have a higher propensity for success in your marriage. You better believe, when some punk, probably from this church, one of y'all's sons, asked me to marry one of my daughters, you better believe they better come fully equipped and ready to go. Just a little advice, 20 years from now. He says, marry and have children, and then find spouses for them so that you may have grandchildren. Multiply and do not dwindle away. And I think, yeah, that sounds really simple, but what he's saying is, hey, not only is your job to make sure that your spouse finds a great partner, but additionally, make sure that your children are great partners for their husband or wife. You got to do that, you know, and part of my job isn't just to protect Isabel and Hermione from a predatory, you know, horrible husband, but to make sure that they're women of God, women after God's own heart, who can lay down their life and admit that they're wrong occasionally and understand how to sacrifice in the context of marriage. That's part of my job too. I think that's what God is calling us to do. I think it's very, very simple. And then, notice what it says. After this is done, only after this is done, then work for the peace and the prosperity for the city where I sent you into exile. Pray to Yahweh for it. For in its welfare, you will find your welfare. Its welfare will determine your welfare. And I think that's really interesting that God just says, hey, look, before you go out into the city, take care of the family stuff. Take care of your household. I want to talk about that today because the Bible talks about families all over the place. The Bible says, you know, some families, though the rain comes in torrents and the floodwaters rise and the winds beat against that house, it won't collapse because it is built on bedrock. But other families, when the rains and the floods come and the winds beat against that house, it will collapse with a mighty crash. And have you ever noticed that some families just have this unbelievable capacity to walk through great storms, and it's like water off a duck's back? And you look at them and you just see this, how do they have such incredibly high capacity lives? How are they able to do so much? You know, you just see this family, like there's a family in our church that runs a community garden. I was just hanging out with them, John and Julian Allen, and it's like, oh my gosh, you guys are crazy. I would die if I lived in your shoes for one day. This is how they have so much capacity to weather these great storms of life and walk in joy. You know, and you see that, and sometimes I want that in my life. And then there are other families, you know, have you ever met one of these families? You're like, hey, man, how's your day? And the dude's like, man, I rushed home from work, and it's horrible, and traffic was terrible, and then I picked up my kids for soccer practice, and I ran to soccer practice, and ended up, I forgot their cleats, and it ruined my day because I realized that they didn't have their cleats, and they had to wear their, you know, $90 Under Armour tennis shoes instead of having real cleats, and so I ran home to get their cleats, but by the time I got back, they had missed out on practice, and my kid's probably in a terrible position to make the varsity team, even though he's only 3 years old, because he didn't get this practice yet, and he's probably going to fail because of my failure, and pretty much my life is over today. And it's like, whoa, it's just cleats, dude. I mean, really? That knocks your family down? Have you ever seen families like that? Has that ever been your family where it's like, oh my gosh, why sometimes is my family able to stand when the wind and the rain comes, and yet other times it's like, and I'll admit, guys, I'm just going to be honest with you, my family, sometimes, you know, sometimes I think, man, God's hand is on us. We're built on bedrock. It's great. But sometimes, like, man, are we built on sand or what right now? You know, I mean, the other day, my one off day of the week, okay, being engaged, good family man, getting down on the kids' level, playing with them, being involved, telling my wife how beautiful she was, making her laugh and stuff, you know, pursuing her and whatnot. And then I realized that my mind was totally disengaged, and I was off on cloud nine, and I thought I was being engaged with my kids, but really I was just busy being stressed out about work, right? So I'm thinking about work, and really, like, my wife is talking to me, and my kids are like, Dad, 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 and I'm just sitting there like this. Huh? What? You know? and then I'm like, Kristen, I just got to write one quick email, right? I just got to write one quick email because something's just bugging me. It's my off day. It's my only off day of the week. You know, I don't get to spend a lot of time with my kids, but it's just my one off day, and I just got to work really fast. So 3 hours later, after I've scrutinized every single word in this email and written it and rewritten it like 10 times, you know, I had to put a little bit of salt in there, you know, just a little bit of salt, a little bit of truth, and I was a little bit worried about it, but I was like, well, I've written it pretty well, so I sent it off to the person, and things are going to be okay. It's fine. It's cool. This is a true story. This actually very recently happened, and all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my gosh, replaying the tape of the email, going back, rereading the email. What if I didn't write that right? What if this person is offended? And Kristen's like, John, you sent the email, okay? You just said it was going to take a few minutes. It's been like 3 hours. Can you just engage with the kids? I'm like, no, I'm busy being stressed out, honey. Okay? I'm checking my cell phone. How come they haven't emailed back? What if this person got offended? What if this person is now blogging about me? What if this person is spreading gossip about our church? What if this person is being negative? What if this person has gotten so offended that they've now decided to commit arson against our church and they're lighting our church on fire? What if this person is burning the church down? Honey, I gotta call the police. I gotta call the police. I gotta drive over to their house. The police aren't gonna be fast enough. Okay? I gotta get a bulletproof vest because they might want to shoot me. They might want to kill us. You know? And then I get the email back and it's like, oh no, it's fine. They're fine. They received it just fine. You know, and it's like, come on, man. That wasn't a storm. That was like a butterfly landing on the roof of our house as family, and it just went, you know? I mean, come on, family. We gotta be able to stand up to more than that. Why is it that sometimes we can stand up in the midst of wind and waves? Why is it that sometimes we can't? You know, and sometimes you just see those families. There's a family at this church I was just talking with the other day. And this family, I enjoy being around them so much. Every time they come around, I just kind of chase after them. They're probably a little bit sick of me. They're like, gosh, that pastor can just keeps asking us questions, and what is with him, you know? And I like you guys. That's the truth, you know? And every time I see them, because this family, I just feel like they exude strength. And if there's one word that I can use to describe this family, it's actually more than one word. A lot more. Peace that surpasses understanding. That's way more than one word. But that's what I see when I see this family. They just have a peace that surpasses understanding. I mean, I love being around them. They've been married for about 90 years now. And in all seriousness, I was just talking to them about their life, and they continually talk about God's faithfulness, you know, and they were sharing with me about what it was like to be awoken one night and to be told that one of their children had been killed in a tragic way. They talked about walking through that tragedy and seeing God's faithfulness in it. You know, and they talked about their love for one another. You can just see that they just love each other. You know, that they have a smoking hot marriage. And it's like, man, I want that. I want that in my life. I mean, I respect that. You know, and probably the couple in my life, of every stage of my life, that I just have the most respect for is my grandmother and grandfather-in-law, Marge and Eldon. Do you have that picture up there of them, possibly? Marge and Eldon, and Marge is actually the one with the short hair right there. Look at it. I picked a great picture, Hermione. But they both have short hair. Marge is the shorter of the two there, and Eldon is the taller of the two old people in that picture. And just got real awkward there as I was describing that. But they're just a wonderful couple. I just love them so much. You could take that picture down, but you see, Marge, and I just got to tell you their story for a moment for the purpose of this illustration, but Marge was an unparalleled beauty queen in Anoka County. I mean, she was the bee's knees there, to use a word from her day. And if it makes sense to you guys, those of you who are older are going to understand this, but her dance card was always full, you know? And all the boys wanted to take her out on dates, and Eldon couldn't even get the time of day from her. And he'd ask her out over and over again, and she was not interested. She said, nah, Eldon was all right. You know, it's funny, because you talk about her now, and that's how she talked. He was all right, you know. And she had a date fall through one night, and so she ends up contacting her spare tire, Eldon, who was always there like a puppy dog. And guys, if you're doing that, if you're playing that game, you got to remember that you're a catch too. Okay, so if she don't recognize the skills, maybe it's time to move on, unless you're Eldon Walter. But anyway, he went and he picked her up, and their love story was written from that day on. You know, and it's been a deep romance between the two of them since then. And you know, they went on to get married really young. I think she was like 18 years old, and they inherited a small farm, and they mortgaged everything to start a little dairy business. And at the time, it was a big deal because there was new technology and automatic milkers that they really spent a fortune trying to get. And they ended up having 200 head of cattle on that, or 200 milking cows on that dairy farm. And milk was really low for a bunch of years, and feed got really high for a bunch of years. And their business crumbled around them, and they lost their inheritance, and they lost their farm. And Marge struggled with this. It's a disease now that I think is much more commonly understood, but at the time there wasn't a whole lot of understanding for people with a manic depressive disorder. And, so she struggled all her life with this thing where she would be up for days on end just feeling like she could conquer the world, and then she would sleep for 2 months, and just couldn't get out of bed and felt like life wasn't worth living. And during these stages, she'd be like, Eldon, I don't even deserve you. I hate my life. I'm going to leave you. I don't know where I'm going to go. And Eldon would always be like, you can't divorce me. If you leave, I'm coming with you, And he just chased after her, and he'd pursue her, and he's so faithful. Eldon means old friend, and he is just so faithful. We thought a lot about naming one of our kids, if we have a boy, Eldon, and he's just such a great man, and I love him so much. And before we moved down here, my wife and I, we took Marge and Eldon out to eat because we just thought, we're in Indiana. We might never get to see them again. They're 86 years old this year, and their health is failing. We thought we might never get to see them again. So we took them out to eat, and we're just talking about them. They're sharing the stories of their lives. And Ellen just kept saying, God has been so good to us. And Marge just kept saying, God has been so good to us. And they would tear up. They would tear up as they talked about God's faithfulness, his faithful provision to them in their lives. And I was like, wow, it doesn't seem to me like God has been good to you. And yet somehow they just had this deep, profound confidence in God's faithfulness to them and God's provision for them. Eldon still works almost full time at a car auction, driving cars. He's 86 years old. He can barely walk. He has to use a cane. And he works full time to provide for his family because he loves his wife. Marge had a stroke, and so while we're out to eat, Eldon's cutting up all her food and feeding it to her. And they just keep tearing up, talking about God's faithfulness to them. They look at each other, and they cry because they love each other so much. And it's just like, man, that is a life well lived. How did they, and so we just were asking them about it, like, how did you get here, and they just kept saying, man, it's all God. He's just been so good to us in our lives. And it baffled me to see this. And at the end of the dinner, we just said, Marge, Eldon, well, actually we said, Eldon, can you just tell us how you got it? What is one piece of advice? We said, what is one piece of advice that you could give us, on how you lived the life that you lived? And Eldon thinks for a moment, and then Marge cut in and cut him off and answered a question that we asked her husband, like always. And she said, trust in the Lord with all your heart. And Eldon had his hearing aids off, and he's pretty deaf, and he didn't hear her. And the part I love is that he just teared up. And, he's got those eyes that are a little murky from cataracts in them, and he just looks at me, and I see these big bags under his eyes, and just tears well up. And he quoted part of Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, and just said, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. And he just talked about how God had provided for him, how he had just trusted the Lord, and the Lord had always brought goodness to him from provision to provision. And I heard that, and I remember going home, and I was like, man, this is some deep stuff, because I don't know if I could have trusted the Lord in the midst of that. And what does that even mean? How does that even work? Because here is a family that though the rain comes in torrents and the floodwaters rise and the winds beat against that house, it won't collapse because it is built on the bedrock. What is the bedrock? In verse 24, right before it says, anyone who listens to my teaching, one translation says, anyone who plows my teaching deep into the soil of their heart. And I love that translation. Anyone who listens to my teaching and plows my teaching deep into the soils of their heart is wise like a person who builds his house on solid rock. I just realized that it was about a deep faith that God was who he said he was. But can you bring those up here for a second, Chrissy? I brought in this new toy in our arsenal of toys. I say arsenal because toys are really like weapons that we use to entertain our children. It's like, maybe I can chew my food if you play with this for a moment. But I love being a dad. Love it. But this is a new favorite at our house. Kids love this one. And it's funny because when I look through these, here, like, whoa, like that guy back there, it's like he has had this mean grimace on his face the whole time, like I'm something. But when I see up close, it's like, whoa, you are just angry. Whoa. I can just see it, and now it kind of makes me feel a little insecure, I'll be honest, because, man, must think that did I say something that offended him? And, oh, my gosh, and maybe I need to change what maybe I'm just a bad preacher, and, all I can see is this face right here, and wow, handsome face, but very angry face. Have mercy, and that's all I can see is this big, giant, angry face. Maybe I'm not preaching too good. Maybe I need to rewrite what I'm saying. Maybe I'm not doing a good enough job. Maybe the Word of God isn't hitting his heart. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, and maybe this is really failing, and it's funny when you're looking through this, I'm just tripping all over the place because I can't even, because I can't even see the surroundings of my life. I can just see this little teeny tiny problem in my life, and now it's big and up close. And this is what I think the deal is so often we see the problems in our lives, but we don't allow the context of God's promises to put them in their place. I think so many times we need to flip the lens around. We've been looking at it like this. We need to flip it around. Because I look at it like this, now I can see, oh my gosh, this whole side. I can see that face in the context of its surroundings. I can see a bunch of people paying rapt attention. Right down, and I remember the fact that, hey, it's not about how I preach. I'll have good weeks and I'll have bad weeks, and it doesn't matter what I say. It matters how God uses what I say. And, I can't work in people's hearts. The Holy Spirit does that, and He's the one who moves in people's hearts. And you know what? You get what you put into it. If you come expecting nothing, guess what? A lot of times I feel like you might get nothing. But if you come with an open heart, ready to allow God's Holy Spirit to work in your life, that's great. And I can't control that. That's on Him. And I see what's there in the context of God's promises, that God's anointed me to do this, God's called me in His path, and I'm not as worried about it because I flip the lens around. And I think so often in our lives, what we do is we get all focused on this problem. My marriage can never overcome this. My job will never be able to overcome this. My children will never overcome that learning disability. I am a failed parent because I'm a failed husband because my work is never going to. My life will never be I've just missed out on my chance, and I thought it was going to be better, and we just need to flip the lens around, guys. Do you understand what our Father, our Heavenly Father in heaven speaks over our families? He says we're deeply loved and highly favored and greatly blessed and totally righteous and destined to reign because of Jesus Christ in our lives. And yet so often we get focused on these problems and we forget the context of His promises. Guys, you want to be a family that stands up in the wind and the waves, though the rains come and the floods may rise and the wind blows? Root your family in God's promises, because we serve a God who is eternal, He's sovereign, and He's so much bigger. He's so much bigger than that little deal, When you let God's promise speak over your marriage, suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, that person doesn't define me, but I can serve them because God's already filled me, and I don't expect them to do that. When you look at your business, it's like, you know what? The streets in heaven are paved in gold. I can give it all away. It can crumble and fall. It doesn't matter because God's already given me exceedingly abundantly more than I could ask for or imagine. And I just feel like there's some people in this church who've got some families that are crumbling. I tell you what, the word of the Lord is a solid rock. We can stand on Christ, a solid rock, right? All other ground is sinking sand, but the word of the Lord will stand forever. I just want to ask you guys to stand, and I want us to declare the promise of God's faithfulness in our lives. And I want this to be a prayer for some of us, because I know that there's some of you here today, God's been moving in your life through this message. You needed this for your family today. And as we sing this next chorus of Cornerstone, I want to ask you guys to declare it as a promise in God's life. As our closing prayer, I want to sing this song as a church, because it's not about us telling God how much we love Him. It's more about us understanding the incredible capacity of God's love for us.